Hi, my name is Medhat. I'm going to give you a lesson today on how to deploy an ASP.NET MVC application to Azure. So what I have here is a simple application with a bunch of buttons here that seem to all work. And we want to deploy this to Azure through VSTS. So for this to work, you need to have a VSTS account and an Azure account. The repo we're going to be using is Git. So let's go now to VSTS. And in VSTS, you would create a new project. So I'm going to create a new project here, and I'll just call it AZ Azure through VSTS. For version control, I'll be using Git. There's another version control used by Microsoft. It's called Team Foundation Version Control. But for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and use Git. There are other ways of managing projects. One is the Agile, one is CMMI, Scrum. You're free to choose whichever system you want to use for this project. So I'll click on Create. So once your project is created, if you already have a project, you need to push it into the repository in VSTS. So you don't really want this first option, which is to clone what's in VSTS onto your computer. You want this option. Push an existing repository from the command line. So I'm going to go to the command line in my solution here, and I can go to that level by choosing Open Folder in File Explorer and typing in the cmd command here. I do that and hit enter to take me into a command line terminal inside of that folder. So now my objective is to push my code into VSTS. If I look at the directory here, I know that because I have gitignore at that level and I have my solution file at that level, I know that I'm at the correct folder to push my code to VSTS. At this point, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go git add dot and go git commit -m my first VSTS deployment. And now I can push it. At this stage, that I can go and copy these two commands that Microsoft gave me when I created the VSTS project. I can go to the corner here and copy these two commands and paste them in here. This will push my code to VSTS. When it's all done, I can go in VSTS and click on code. And sure enough, I can see my code right here. If I want, I can even edit some of this code. For example, I can go into the controllers folder, click on, say, the home controller, and then edit here in the corner, and I should be able to edit some of the code here if I want to. In this case, I'm not going to edit, I'm just going to cancel. So now that our code is in the repository, we want to do a build. To do a build, you can click on Build and Release Builds right here. I want to create a new build. So I'm going to click New Definition, and they have given you some standard templates for building standard applications. In VSTS, not only can you build ASP.NET applications, you can build any other types of applications. For example, down here you can see that you can build Android applications. You can build Node applications. You can build Java applications, Java web applications. The one that we are interested in here is building ASP.NET applications, because our application is an ASP.NET application. It's not ASP.NET Core. It's ASP.NET. So I'm going to choose this and click on Apply. Now, on the next page, we need to fill out the agent queue that is going to be responsible for building your code. If you click on the drop-down list, the most suitable for this is hosted Visual Studio 2017. Our application was built in Visual Studio 2017, and the solution file is a Visual Studio 2017 version of that solution file. So this selection allows VSTS to use the solution file to detect what kind of code you've got, and it will use some smarts to determine which project in your solution is a web application and which project in your solution is a testing application. So that's the one I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose hosted Visual Studio 2017. The next step is click on Save and Queue. I'll click on that. And then it comes up with a drop-down list, and then again click on Save and Queue. Here you can enter a comment. It's not really mandatory. And there's also a field here for commit descriptions. It's not really mandatory. I'm not going to enter anything here. I'll just continue clicking on the Save and Queue button at the bottom. What happened is it started a build. There is a link here that you can click on to see the progress of that particular build. So I'm going to click on that. And at this point, it was waiting for an agent, and now it found an agent, and that agent is running the build. What is it doing exactly? It's taking the code, it's compiling it. After it compiles it, it's going to run the unit tests. If any of this fails, the build will be a failure. And everything else that is dependent on that build is going to stop. After a while, the build will complete. It will either fail or it will pass. In my case, the build has failed. And down here it says VST test task failed. And I even got an email telling me that my test case has failed. Now, if you want to find out what went wrong, you can actually click on the step that failed. And down here, test assembly seems to have failed. So if I click on test assemblies and go to the bottom, you can actually see the error message right here. Okay, so I know that one of my test cases has failed. Let me go down to Visual Studio and run my test case. And possibly one of them is not working, has failed. Let me go down here, look at my test cases, and sure enough, my about test case has failed. And over here, it tells me why. Your application description page. So the expected is this, and the actual is something else. The actual is something else over here. So my actual and my expected are not the same. And I know why that happened. Because I purposely added a word in my controller that wasn't supposed to be there. So I have here the word super. If I remove it, my test cases should pass. Let me delete this. Save, compile, and run my test cases again. And if they all pass, I'm going to push my code into VSTS again. So let me run all my test cases, and if I go now and see all my test cases, they pass. So I'm going to push my code into VSTS again. So to do that, I'm going to go git add hot git commit -m, and I'll say here fixed a failed test case. And then I'll push my code into VSTS. Do this. So now I probably have the latest code. Let me have a look. We can go into code, and I'll check my controller. And my controller does not have the word super here anymore. So I'm good. Let me run my build again. Run the build. So I have this build that had failed before because this is what it said it happened to it. I can click on that build and choose to do a new build with the agent. So I'll click on Queue New Build and click on Queue again. And now I'm running the build again. I can click on this .2, the second build that's being attempted here. Click on it, and at this point it is waiting for an agent. As soon as an agent is found, then the process will kick off. So now an agent has been found and the build is running. At this point, I can breathe a sigh of relief because my build has succeeded. The next step is to do a release. Now, in order to do a release into Azure, I need to do the following. I need to go into Azure. Here's the email I received saying that my test case has succeeded. This is coming from VSTS. Now, in Azure, I need to create a web application so that VSTS can push the build into that web application. So I'm going to come here at App Resources, and I'll create a new web app. Click on Web App. I don't need a database for this particular example. I'm just going to go with a web app. Click on Create, and I'll give the web app a name. I'll call it VSTS to Azure. And I'll accept the defaults and click on the Create button. So my web app's name is VSTS to Azure. Now, let me go back into VSTS. Now that I have a web app that I can push my build into. At this level, you have this button, Release. This allows you to release into Azure. I'll click on Release. Over here, you can have multiple environments. Now, on the right-hand side, you have templates for deployment. Just like we had templates for building, we have templates for deployment. And the most appropriate for what we're trying to do here is Azure App Service Deployment. Remember, the web app we created in Azure is actually called an Azure App Service. So this template knows how to push builds into Azure. I'm going to click on this and click on apply. Over here, I can have different environments. In a large company, you might have a dev environment, you might have a staging environment, you can have a production environment. Let me just call this the dev environment. So the next step is to look at the phases and the various tasks that are going to be accomplished during the deployment process. So you would click on this link here. When you click on this link, one of the things that you're supposed to choose here is the subscription and the Azure web app that you want to push into. So if the account that you're using in VSTS matches the account that you're using in Azure, in other words, if you're using the same Outlook account or the same live.com account or the same Hotmail account, then when you open this drop-down list, VSTS can tell you the numbers of subscriptions that you have. In my case, I have actually 2 subscriptions. I have Visual Studio Enterprise and Microsoft Imagine. So I'm going to choose the Microsoft Imagine, which is a student account. It asks me to authorize against that account. So I'm going to click on authorize, and at this point I need to authenticate with my Azure subscription. Once it authorizes, under app service name, it's going to give me a list of all the web apps that are on Azure, and I get to choose which one I want to push my build into. You can see that it indeed has verified and validated and authorized access to my subscription. Now if I click on the drop down here, it's going to load all the web apps that I have, and I know that the one I created for this particular demo is this web app. So I'm going to choose this web app, and the next step is save. I'm just going to choose the default, and once that is saved, I'm going to create a release. What is meant by release? Release is take my build, which is a bunch of DLLs that it created, and push it. Let's create that release. So I want to push this into the dev environment. Now, if you had different environments, you may want to push it into, say, staging production. Now, it says here, what are the artifacts? The artifact is the latest build that I created. Remember, the .1 build failed, my .NET 2 build passed. So this build that I'm pushing to Azure. So click on create, and now it has started a release. So again, releases, just like with builds, they require an agent. So let's click on this link here. And you can see that something is happening here. At this stage, I need to click on the release and say deploy. And then click on deploy. This should deploy the build. Now the build is in progress. So it's being pushed to Azure. If you want to see the progress of this release, you can click on logs here. Click on logs, it will tell you how it's deploying the app to Azure. So it's actually copying all these files. And it appears to have completed. We know now that this release has completed. We have a success. So the way to find out whether indeed it is successful or not is to go to Azure under App Services. Let's find out our app, VSTS to Azure. So if we click on our link, we should determine whether the web app is actually working or not. So I'm going to click on this link, and sure enough, our web app has been deployed to the cloud, to Azure. Now, the one thing that may not work yet is if I register a user, that will fail because we haven't connected a database to the application yet. So let's see. This should fail because it cannot find a database. And sure enough, it did fail, but we get an error message that doesn't really give us any clue as to what happened. If you want to display detailed errors so that you can troubleshoot the problem that you're experiencing in Azure, you need to add custom errors element in your web.config file. I'm going to open up a notepad and tell you what is it you need to enter. You need to enter this and maybe put off here, custom errors mode off, and put this in the section of system web. Into that section in your web.config file. A quick way of doing it right in Azure is as follows. Go into Azure, in the filter, click on Advanced, and choose the Advanced Tools. Click on Go here, and then under Debug Console, choose either CMD or PowerShell, it doesn't make a difference. This gives you a list of the artifacts that exist in the website folder. So click on Site, www-root, and in the www-root there is this web.config file. You want to edit this. And when you edit this, in your system web section here, you want to paste this code, but instead of remotely, you want to say off. So if you save this and then go back and refresh the page, but just to be on the safe side, what you can do is this. You want to stop and restart your app just to make sure you take the new value in the web.config file. So you can come here to your web app and choose Restart. That allows you to restart the web app. Now that it has restarted, let's go back to our website and try to do another register. It will fail again, but we want to have more details of that error. So I'm going to register again and just wait for it to fail. While we wait for it to fail, I want to show you something interesting about what it is that VSTS is packaging and what it is it's going to be sending to Azure. We can go back to the build. So the build that we created is this build here. So let me click on that build. And associated with that build is this link called artifacts. So if you click on artifacts here, you can download the actual build that was created by VSTS. So let me download this file. And here it is. I'm going to copy it and put it on my hard drive somewhere. And if I open it up, you will see that it zipped my application, and this is the package that's being sent to Azure. All these DLLs. It packaged everything into this zip file, and this is being sent as a package to Azure, and Azure is extracting it in the root folder, and that constitutes your web application. Now let's get back to here and see the detailed error that was created. This provides you with more clues about what went wrong. This actually says the system cannot find the file specified. And the problem is that in our web.config file is pointing to a database file that is saved locally. Now that database file doesn't exist on the server. So that's why it's crashing. And this will give you enough information in order to pursue the problem. Thank you very much, and I hope you benefited from this video.